Hello and welcome, everybody. This is season 1, episode 3, and we made it to episode 3. I know that in the beginning I mentioned that someone told me a statistics that normally podcasts don't survive after the third episode, if I'm not mistaken. And well, here we are. It's the third episode, and hopefully we get a fourth one, which is the next one. So I just came from lunch with, first, if you're joining us right now, this is your first podcast that you're watching with me. This is a podcast that's called No Strings, Just Candor, and it has a little bit of everything. It has a little bit of mental health. It has a little bit of HR. It has a little bit of leadership, corporate. It basically wraps the three things that I'm deeply passionate about, which is mental health, HR, and helping other people. And my dog decides to, I think this is him just trying to say hello to all of you, because I feel like he hasn't barked for a long time. And now I just got on camera, he started barking. So if you do hear him, I'm sorry. So yeah, welcome to the podcast where I most recently realized that having a script and a schedule might not work for me, at least not for this podcast. So I just came from lunch with a really, really good friend of mine, and she's fantastic. I need to start learning to ask people's permission to say their names, because obviously I'm not going to say her name now. And it was really nice to catch up, and they have their own personality out there in social media, and we've been in each other's journeys. And wow, I want to say for 18, 19, 1, 2, 3, 4, for about 6 years now, 5, 6 years, we've been in each other's lives, and we've definitely seen each other grow throughout many things. And talking to her was funny, because I think I messaged her and I said, I want to meet with you for drinks or lunch so that we can discuss, because I really want to have you in the podcast as a guest. And we really just caught up on life. But then we did start talking about different things. And I told her, honestly, I'm a loose cannon when it comes to this podcast. I think I know what I want to talk about, and I write it down, and everyone listening to me, I promise you that I write it down and I say, today I'm going to talk about this, and these are going to be my key points, and this is going to be the summary. And once I am in front of the camera, I'm kind of like, all right, screw this. This is what we're going to talk about. So today, I think I am going to stay on track a little bit, but we are going to branch out into a couple things that came out during the lunch that I just had with my friend, which is why also I am dressed like this. I did have a different top on, but it didn't really look good on camera. So we did a little bit of a switcheroo. And yeah, so I want to talk about those points with her. And I also want to talk about other things that came to mind, and maybe you'll branch out. But before I get started, I want to say thank you so much to everybody that tuned in. Thank you so much for everybody that was listening to me, that interacted with my posts on social media, that got back to me with messages of how my last video impacted them. And it was, I will always say it, it's so humbling when someone tells you that your voice matters, which is why I will never stop telling you that your voice matters. So one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, and I know in the last podcast, if you have seen it, I talk about a little bit of imposter syndrome, a little bit of HR, a little bit of kind of overcoming these like little hurdles and mental health roadblocks that we sometimes come across. But I always promise to be candid. I always promise to be raw with you guys. So it's not a secret that while I am consulting, and I do have my clients for consulting, love you, all of you, because you still get me to do what I love to do every single day, I'm still interviewing for more in-house roles. And I most recently interviewed for a company that I would have loved to work for. And it was one of those companies where I continuously say, I want to work for a company that's doing something bigger than themselves. So I feel like I'm contributing to something. It was one of those. And I did the first round of interviews and everything went great. And I prepared. So a little bit of tip for all of you listening, when I go into an interview, I do a company profile. I start looking at things that the company has, how long they've been around. I look into their leadership team. I take notes. I put down questions that I would ask. And to be honest, I do use AI for this. I end up putting all of my notes together and I send it off into ChatGPT. And I kind of ask it to put together a company profile where I would better understand what it is that I, as a head of people or VP of people or chief people officer, would be coming in and doing. And it does help. It helps a lot. You have to play around with it a little bit, but overall, I prepped in that way and I felt good. So, after that first interview, I met the lovely recruiter and I connected with her immediately. I hope she feels the same. I don't want her listening to this and being like, well, didn't really feel like that. But I thought she was fantastic and I really made a connection with her. And when I meet you, if I ever meet you and I tell you, I want to grab a coffee, I want to get to know more about you, I truly mean it. I'm not just putting it out there because trust me, sometimes I meet people and I'm like, I don't know. And I'm just like, it was really nice to meet you. Got to go by. So I am honest, both professionally and personally. And my friend and I were kind of laughing because I said, I have gotten kind of to the point in my career and my personal life where I don't care. We need to speak up more. We need to talk more. Something is going terribly wrong in the market and we need to do something about it. And I think using our voice is the first thing that we could start doing. So I interview for this company and I get a call back and I say, okay, they're going to pass you on to the next round. They're so interested in you. They really want to talk to you. They're very impressed, so and so on. I got so excited. Started looking into the profile. I started going over my resume. I started going over the things that I know they're going to ask me because I've built these processes and systems before. I've trained managers and executives on talent acquisition best practices and the questions and how you're supposed to answer them and so forth. So I'm prepping and I feel good about it. During that weekend, I get a call from one of my clients, and that client asks me to please rearrange what I'm doing because they really need me to be part of a meeting. And I did. It's a client. I bend over backwards for my clients because not only are they trusting me, but they're allowing me to be a part of their company and of their culture. So I said, of course, let me just go ahead and change things around. And I did. It so happens that the second interview was going to be scheduled for that same day of my client meeting in the afternoon. So I said, yes, absolutely. I want to meet with these people as soon as possible. And I want to tell you that my client's meeting went well. It didn't. Newsflash for everybody. Doesn't matter what role you're in, whether you're an executive or an entry level or a mid-senior, it does not matter. Things don't always go perfectly. We're all making it up as we go, right? There's so many different ideas and different companies and so many things out there that if anybody tells you they have it 100% fully figured out, they're, probably lying to you. So I get to the meeting. The meeting did not go good. I was flustered. I was stressed. I looked down at the time and I am about an hour and a half away from the interview of the company, I want to say of the company of my dreams. And I get home, I change really fast. I fix everything because it was such a disappointing meeting that I was trying to get through it. And I was trying to kind of just separate what had just happened. And I said, I can't really think about this. I'll follow up with my client. I'll figure it out later. And then let's get into the interview. So I show up to the interview. And guys, I know right now we're mad at the market. We are, because it is such a struggle to be out there right now and looking for a job. I know that when we get rejections, when we get rejected, we get upset at the company and all of that. But let's be real. You also know when it is your fault. And sometimes it is. I know that I was well prepared and well equipped for this company because not only did I have the passion to be able to fit this role, but I knew that I had done everything they were looking for, and it was just, to me, a perfect fit. And I show up to the meeting, but I realize I'm still flustered. I'm still trying to get everything together. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to say. I forgot everything that I had prepped for, but I just show up. I show up. And I go through the meeting and I meet these two lovely people in this meeting. And as I'm answering their questions, I realize I'm going around in a circle. I'm not really answering their questions. For those of you out there who are not familiar with the STAR answer method, it's the situation when somebody asks you, let me rewind a little bit. When somebody asks you, tell me your experience about benefits, for example, and you're interviewing, and this isn't an HR role, and you're interviewing, what they're looking for is the situation, the task, the action, and the result. So for example, this would look like when I first went into this company, I realized they did not have a robust benefit plan, or they had a lack thereof benefit plan, or in my first 90 days, I sent out a survey and employees said they weren't happy with their benefit plan. So what I ended up doing was I looked for brokers and I spoke to brokers. I ended up doing a whole broker breakdown, and I gave them and I prepared ROIs and I prepared all this type of information. And we ended up having to do a rehaul, like a total overhaul of the benefits, which resulted in, when we sent out a survey, which resulted in a 90% employee satisfaction and benefits. And not only that, but we also saved the company money in getting rid of benefits that we just didn't need. Obviously, you would go more into detail if that was something that you actually did, but this is pretty much an example. That's what they're looking for, especially at a leadership level. We can later, in another episode, we can start talking more about interviews in a junior level and a entry level, median level, but right now I'm talking about at a leadership level. And they are looking for that STAR method. I think it applies throughout everywhere, but right now, for the sake of this conversation, I was interviewing for the leader role. And I knew that that's what they were looking for. I had it practiced. I had it written down on paper. I knew it. I knew all of my accomplishments because I keep track of my accomplishments. I keep track of the ROI of my accomplishment. I keep track of all of this. And I really was not answering them with this. I really found myself tapping into the podcast me, which is I started telling stories. I don't want to say, so after I finished, I said, I just got too excited, or I just showed my passion too much. And I don't think that was it. I think they would have 100% loved me, still passionate, still excited, still everything. I think they would have 1000%, but if I would have answered their questions. So I left the meeting, the interview. I knew that I hadn't done what I needed to do. I knew that I hadn't answered the questions that they needed to get answered. And that was fair. So I said, you know what? If it's meant to be, it will be. If they will call me, they'll call me. And about a couple days later, I received my rejection letter. The rejection letter was another reason probably why I adore this recruiter, this talent acquisition specialist, and I adore this company. It was such a nice letter. They, it just came down to the fact that they found someone else that kind of fit what they were looking for a little bit better. And I remember sharing this with my friends, and I remember sending it to one of my friends. She responded and she's like, well, I'm going to be petty and I'm going to say this about this company. And that's our first reaction, right? When you send it to your friends, they're like, well, they didn't deserve you anyway. You dodged the red flag. You didn't need them. And granted, yeah, that can be true. A lot of times that can be true. But other times it just isn't. Other times it's on you. So I feel like my forehead is very shiny. So when it comes to it, I kind of sat there and I said, well, I don't need anybody to be petty. I don't need anybody to talk down about them and maybe that their process was wrong, which it wasn't. It was a very good and easy and smooth process. It wasn't about the personality of the people that I spoke to. They respected me. They respected my time. They asked the questions. It just solely came down to the fact that I did not interview the way that I should have. So here's my thing. And here's what I want you to take from this story. I know rejections hurt. And I know they hurt so much, especially when you're so invested in the company and you love the company so much and you're saying, I deserve to be in this company. However, be honest with yourself after the interview. Write down, what answers, go over the answers that you get. I'm not asking you to go to drive yourself wild and dizzy going over everything you said and you should have said something better and you should have, that happened. That's done. That's in the past. You cannot change that. But what could you do better for next time? What I could have done better was, even though it would have maybe not looked so good, I would have maybe rescheduled. I would have probably said, hey, you know what, talent acquisition specialist, today something came up. Let me talk to you later. Or can we please schedule for a later time? And I would have maybe decided to clear my whole day to really focus on interviewing. Because if you're out there and you are a hiring manager and you've been a hiring manager for a very, very long time and you haven't been in this market, being in the seat of a job seeker, it is currently terrifying. It is one of the scariest markets I have ever seen, experienced, talked to people about. Everybody is scared. Everybody is so scared of being left without a job that, this was even one of the things that my friend and I talked about, that people are willing to stay in toxic jobs and willing to kind of sacrifice their mental health because they don't want to be in this market. So if you are listening and you're a talent acquisition specialist, if you are listening and you're an executive hiring manager or whatever it is, please recognize the fact that it is so hard to be a job seeker at the moment. I have a job. I have clients. And I was still terrified. I was still flustered. I was still nervous. So I am asking for a little bit of leeway and a little bit more of understanding when you are speaking to this job seeker at where they are at. And, maybe I'll have one of those hard ass executives or hiring managers who are saying like, well, then you don't belong in a leadership if you can't work under pressure. Please be more empathetic. You have no idea how many interviews this person has sat through. You have no idea how many rejections this person has sat through. So please be a little bit kinder when you're interviewing someone, because you just have no idea what happened that day. You have no idea if they're going through something that they just decided to say, you know what, this is more important. I need to put this aside, but they just couldn't. You just never know a person's situation. And I'm not saying it just because I was in the situation. I'm saying it because I also did that when I was leading my talent acquisition team. I remember telling one of my talent acquisition teams is, please be kind to the other person because we just don't know. We don't know if they had to get care for their children at last minute because their babysitter, called out at last minute. Or you don't know if they're getting a call from one of their family members saying that there is an emergency, or you don't know any of this. So one of the things when I was leading my talent acquisition was do not cancel last minute, because you have no idea the amount of prep that goes into a job seeker's interview prep. Don't cancel last minute. If you are going to cancel, give it 24 hours in advance and make sure that you are setting a time right when you're canceling. But going back to things that I could have done better, I could have rescheduled. I could have easily said, you know what, like, I'm going to reschedule and I'm going to wait for a day where I can really show them that I am good for this job. But I didn't. I decided to push through, and that's just who I am, and that's okay. And I made that mistake. I could have paused. I could have asked them to give me a second. They were, again, fantastic, amazing. And I could have told them, just give me 1 second. I'm trying to get my thoughts together. And heads up for hiring managers. If you're asking a question and they're rapid firing answering you, they are so nervous. So if you want, and you have the ability to, stop and ask them, do you want to take a second? Do you want to take a second to answer this question? Do you want to take a second to think about this question? Because as a job seeker, as an interviewee, we're so terrified that you're bored with our answers, or that you're in a hurry, or that we're wasting your time, or that we are talking your ear off and you're just bored of our answers. We're so terrified. So be honest with them. Just say, do you want to take a second and answer this question? Or, you know what, like, maybe I didn't communicate it the right way. Let me just repeat it. Don't worry. We're just here. I'm trying to find out for you. So it's both ways. Everybody always talks about, well, the interview goes both ways, but are you really treating the interviewee with the same respect? And are you really as prepped? Because we had a little bit of technical problems, we did have to stop the camera and then restarted it. So bear with me while I remember what I was talking about. But I know that I was talking about the fact that we're so nervous when we're interviewing because the market is completely bonkers out there. So again, if you're talent acquisition, if you are anybody, executives who is in charge of interviewing people, please be kinder and understand that this is nothing like we've seen before. Okay. Now, what I can admit is the fact that I am not built for every company. I am not built for every client, and I'm not built for every listener. So this is the part where you're also going to go into a journey with me. A lot of people have asked me, who is your audience? And when you read all of these different, podcast books and all of that, they say, well, first you need to identify your audience. I have not identified my audience. At this point, the audience is whoever wants to listen. I do know that I want to help people. I do know that I want to talk about mental health, and I know that I want to talk about human resources because it is where my passion is. That is my career. That is what I have experience in. So when I look ahead, I want this to reach genuine listeners. I don't want you to listen just because, hey, Odette's talking again. I don't want you to listen because you feel that you're obligated to because you're close to me, you're a family member. I want you to listen to me if the things that I'm saying resonate with you. Maybe one episode does, maybe one episode doesn't. I know that the camera troubles threw me off a little bit. I know I was talking about rejection. I know that I talked about what you can be doing better as an interviewee. You could be practicing the STAR method as the, situation, task, action, result. You can be honest with yourself if you're just not ready the day of your interview or before, and you're saying, this might get in the middle, reschedule, reach out. And I also talked about on the other side as far as what talent acquisition and hiring managers should be doing. A little empathy goes a long way. A little conversation, like I said, just as much as, hey, do you want to take a minute? That goes a long way. And when you are making your decisions, always take into account that this person was showing up nervous, that this person has a lot riding on this interview. So take that into consideration and don't be so critical. Don't be so judgmental as into why they repeated themselves, or why it was that they stuttered a little bit, or why it was that they got flustered a little bit. It's normal. It is human nature. If we're doing something important, we are going to get nervous. We are going to have that pit in our stomach. Please recognize that. So when you're going through, and HR, if you're listening to me, train your leaders, your hiring managers, train them a little bit more on emotional intelligence, train them more of setting a safe space for the interviewee. And I promise you that you will have better outcomes, and you might get a lot better quality hires. So to you, I say, to my listeners, most of the time I know what I'm going to talk about. Other times I'm going to say, well, nope, that I don't really feel like talking about that. I'm just going to jump on camera and I'm going to talk. And that's what I did today. And hopefully this is going to be out there. So if you're listening, that means that Amanda, who has, volunteered and decided to help me with the editing and with all of that, if you're listening to this, that means she did an amazing job. We still have not figured out what days we want HR to be out, the HR episode to be out just yet. We're thinking maybe a Fridays, maybe we'll stick to Wednesdays. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. So again, this is a learning process. This is a work in progress. This is, work with me, bear with me. But what I do want to do is thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for hearing my thoughts on this. And thank you for always showing up and getting back to me and commenting. And, I know that I have a few comments that talk about things that I should be talking about in later episodes, and I'm taking those into consideration. And your feedback means so much to me. But overall, please be kind. Most of all, be kind to yourself and realize that you don't know everyone's story. You don't know with what struggles people are showing up in front of you. You don't know what weight they have on their shoulders. So overall, be kind. We need it. The world is going to shit. And I guess I will catch you on the next episode, which would be episode 4, which means that we would have made that milestone. And to all the new subscribers, welcome. I hope that you're enjoying this ride, and strap in, because we're just getting started. Thank you, everybody.